Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's session. My name is Deskia, and I'm one of the event coordinators for the Redmond Reactor Space. Before we get started today, I've got a few things I'd like to go over, so if you could please take a moment to read our code of conduct. We seek to provide a respectful environment for both our audience and presenters. We encourage engagement in the chat, but we ask that you please be mindful of your commentary, remain professional and on topic. Useful links will be shared throughout the chat, and the session will be recorded and will be available on demand in 24 to 48 hours on the Microsoft Reactor YouTube channel. That brings us to today's session. We're scheduled to run approximately for 1 hour, and there will be time for questions throughout. Which brings me to our speaker today, Moses, and I will turn it over to him and let him get started.
Yeah, so welcome all to the Student Innovator series. So our session today is going to be based on GitHub Copilot adventures, and I'm excited to have you all here. So a little bit about me. My name is Moses Mtengo. I'm a Gold Microsoft Learn Student Ambassador from Kenya. And in my spare time, I'm a truck driver. But that's just on the fun side, on Eurotrack, not in real life. So on to our agenda for the day. We're going to kick things off with what are Copilot adventures. And in a nutshell, Copilot adventures are a series of coding challenges that people solve using GitHub Copilot. But we're going to talk more about that later. We'll then move on to getting started with GitHub Copilot. And there's a warm-up adventure that is going to walk us through that. And then we are going to move on to the main coding adventures. So those are of 3 categories. You have the beginner one, you have the intermediate and advanced, but those levels are subjective depending on your level of expertise with GitHub Copilot. So for someone who is used to maybe working with GitHub Copilot, the advanced stage might seem like a little bit like a beginner stage for them. But for someone who's new to GitHub Copilot, that beginner stage might take them a little bit more time to complete. Yeah. And the graphic that you see on the screen, that's from the advanced stage. And then after that, we are going to move on to the next steps. So what are the next steps after this session? Where do we go from here? So before we get started, the session is going to be about GitHub Copilot adventures, but for you to understand GitHub Copilot adventures, you first need to understand what GitHub Copilot is. So a simple explanation, GitHub Copilot is basically your AI pair programmer, okay? This is simply an AI agent that is specifically trained on code and can assist you with your daily coding tasks. So that can be debugging, that can be documentation, that can be writing unit tests. And also some of the features that GitHub Copilot offers, you can see those on the left, on the right. One of the features is code suggestions. So I'm sure some of you have gone on to YouTube and you've seen some videos of some guys saying, I built this entire website or I built a game using ChatGPT. So while they were doing that, they were making use of that particular feature, code suggestions. So you simply give GitHub Copilot a prompt and then it generates code for you. So it's as simple as that. And then we have other features, so many code editors. You have JetBrains, you have VS Code, you have NeoVim, you also have Jupyter Notebooks, so many. And the last one that I'm going to talk about is support for multiple programming languages. So I am yet to see a programming language that is not supported by GitHub Copilot. Almost every programming language that you can think of is supported. So everyone is catered for by GitHub Copilot. So what are Copilot adventures? So Copilot adventures are coding challenges or puzzles that are presented in a fun story-like format, and you're expected to use GitHub Copilot to solve these challenges. And in so doing, you gain an understanding on how to be able to use GitHub Copilot. You gain an understanding on its capabilities and some of the tips and tricks that you can use to maybe level up your GitHub Copilot game and set you apart from the rest. So a fun fact, this entire presentation, the graphics, the puzzles, the storyline, everything was generated with the help of AI, specifically Microsoft Copilot and Azure AI. So Dan Wallin, who is one of the cloud advocates at Microsoft, he basically came up with a set of ideas in bullet points, and he gave those ideas to Microsoft Copilot and asked Microsoft Copilot to convert them into a mythical story. And after a few iterations, Copilot basically generated this entire presentation that we're going to go through today, the puzzles, the adventures, everything. So that gives you a sense into the power of artificial intelligence. And it's a good thing that today we're going to learn about one of the tools that leverages artificial intelligence. And if you want to use Microsoft Copilot, you simply go to copilot.microsoft.com. It's as simple as that. And it's a really great tool, actually. I think it's much better than ChatGPT because it's much more interactive with the user. When you ask a question, it gives you a response, and then it also asks like a thoughtful follow-up question. And even the UI and how the responses are generated, it's a really nice tool. So go ahead and check it out. And so next, we're going to move on to the warm-up adventure. And the warm-up adventure is basically meant to get us started using in this particular adventure. So it's basically meant to get us started. And our warm-up adventure is known as the Chamber of Echoes. And in it, we're going to use GitHub Copilot to solve a simple coding adventure. And there was a video that was generated specifically for this warm-up adventure. And it basically tells the background of the warm-up adventure. So let's take a listen.
Perched atop the highest hill, overlooking the kingdom, stands the majestic Echo Castle. Within its stone walls is a chamber known as the Echo Room. This chamber, unlike any other, has the mystic power to echo numbers to anyone who enters. However, the Echo Room doesn't just echo back any numbers. It always echoes the next number in a sequence. Legends tell of a wizard who enchanted this chamber to test the intellect of visitors. The room would echo numbers in sequence, and only those who could predict the next echo were deemed worthy of the castle's hidden treasures. Your task is to enter the Echo Room and listen to its sequence, then predict the next number it will echo. You have been provided with a series of numbers the room has echoed in the past. Use these numbers to determine the next one in the sequence.
Yeah, so that's the video, and I really like it actually. So a fun side note, if I know you might be wondering, how can I generate my own avatars? So don't worry, we've got you covered. If you want to do that, simply go to aka.ms/AI avatar, and you'll be directed to this Microsoft Learn webpage, whereby you can be able to create your own avatars with the voice, the video, and everything. Yeah, so go ahead and check it out. One of the cloud advocates at Microsoft did the work on this, and it's really amazing. And you can also do it too. So now I'm going to switch over to my warm-up adventure, to the GitHub repository, because we've done enough talking. So let's actually get our hands dirty and get started on the warm-up adventure. So this is so when you go to aka.ms/copilot adventures, you will get to this GitHub repository. And when you scroll on down, you are going to learn all about the Copilot adventures that we're going to go through in this particular session. And basically, there are two ways to get started with this Copilot adventure. That's what we are going to be doing in a moment. But you can also choose to do it the old school way. So you can choose to fork the repository, and then you clone it onto your local machine, and then you work on it right from VS Code. But for this particular case, let's enter the adventure arena. And when you do that, it's going to open up a page that is going to require you to set up your code space. So this is the page, and the main thing that I normally change here is the region, so as to choose a region that is much closer to me. And then you can simply click on create a code space and it will do that for you. But for this particular case, I already created the code space. So this is what it looks like. And for those who are not familiar with code spaces, code space is basically a coding environment in the browser. So you can think of a code space like VS Code in the browser. And it's not only VS Code, it can be all the JetBrains IDEs that you can think of. It can be NeoVim, it can be Jupyter Notebooks. Okay, so many IDEs are supported. And that's one of the amazing features of GitHub Code Spaces, and it's free for students. So you can simply gain access to the GitHub Student Developer Pack, and you'll be able to gain access to such features. And it's really useful, especially when you have a machine that maybe doesn't support heavy workloads. So you maybe, some machines cannot even support like multitasking or opening multiple environments like you do sometimes when you're coding. So GitHub Code Spaces comes in handy during such instances. You simply spin up a code space, and when you do that, you select exactly the amount of compute power that you need from that particular machine. You get to select the amount of RAM that you need, the region that you want. So you can choose maybe 2 gigs of RAM, 6 gigs of RAM. You can choose maybe 2 cores, 3 cores, 8 cores, or 16 cores. So you basically get to set up the code space the way you want it. And that really comes in handy. So our code space is taking a little bit of time to set up. I had already opened it up, but it seemed it went to sleep, so it needs to reload. But that's basically about what a GitHub Copilot is. So when this opens up, we are going to see the intro into the warm-up adventure. And we are going to see what the warm-up adventure is about and some of the other main coding adventures that are on there. As this loads, let's talk a little bit about GitHub Copilot. Another amazing feature of GitHub Copilot, I'll go back to the presentation. Another amazing feature of GitHub Copilot is privacy and security. So GitHub Copilot can be able to tell you of any security vulnerabilities that exist within your code. So it just identifies some of the vulnerabilities that are on your code. Let's say if you've exposed, let's say a particular API key within your code, GitHub Copilot can be able to identify that and notify you of that. So another thing that is good at is in terms of personalization. So GitHub Copilot is grounded in the data that you give it. So it can really generate suggestions that are tailored to the kind of content that you're working on. It's about to open up. So let me talk a little bit about the warm-up adventure that you're going to get into. So basically, with this warm-up adventure, there's this enchanted castle, and within the enchanted castle, there's an echo room. And this echo room basically comes up with a set of numbers in a sequence. It echoes a set of numbers in a sequence. And what you're supposed to do is to predict the next number in that particular sequence in order to be deemed worthy of the amazing treasures that are hidden within the castle. So we are going to be using GitHub Copilot to be able to predict the next numbers in that sequence. And in order for us to be able to do that, there are some things that we need to do first. First of all, we need to be able to create a constant to be able to hold that entire sequence. After that, we need to be able to determine the common difference between the consecutive numbers. Let's say if we have a sequence of 3, 6, 9, and 12, we need to be able to determine the common difference between those numbers. So the common difference can be something like, so if it's 3, 6, 9, and 12, the common difference is 3. And then after that, we are going to basically predict the next number in the sequence based on that identified pattern. And we're going to be using GitHub Copilot to do that. And while we do that, we're going to learn about so many features that GitHub Copilot offers. We're going to learn about the slash commands. These are some intuitive features that are meant to basically reduce the time that you use in running some of these common use cases. Let's say like fixing bugs or documentation. There are some really nice commands that can be able to do that for you. There's also a feature whereby GitHub Copilot can generate some code right from a comment. So we'll also see how we can be able to do that. We just enter a comment and GitHub Copilot actually uses that particular comment to generate some code for you. And there's also another feature whereby you can simply talk to GitHub Copilot right from within the file, right from within the editor. So you do not need to open up the GitHub Copilot chat on the side. You just you enter Control-I, and it opens up an input bar whereby you can be able to communicate with GitHub Copilot. And so many other features. We also have things that are known as agents. So these are basically things that are meant to ground the data that you give Copilot access to. It's like you're fine-tuning the kind of access that Copilot has. So agents, let's say when I use the agent at Workspace, that will open up, that will make GitHub Copilot to be grounded on the actual data that I'm using within my code space. There's a particular image that should be displayed at this particular point, but it's not yet opened. Yeah, so we also have the participants, we also have the variables. So variables are basically things that you use to be able to, let's say if I want to be able to generate commands or to generate output that can assist me to work with the terminal, there's a variable that you can use to be able to do that. Or let's say I want to be able to generate suggestions from GitHub Copilot to be able to work with the VS Code API. So there is also a variable that can assist you to be able to do exactly that. So many features that we want to learn about today, but the code space seems to, it's not on the same page with us. Oh, now it's opened up the page. So let's hope it's going to open up so that we can get our hands dirty and actually get started on the warm-up adventure. And we also have content. So let's say if you're totally new to GitHub Copilot, there's also a section whereby I'll be showing you how, the resources that you can make use of to basically set up GitHub Copilot if it's your first time doing this. So as we wait for this to open up, are there any questions that anyone might be having in the chat? You can ask any questions that you have before we actually get started with the warm-up adventure. We can use this time to maybe go through any questions that someone might be having about GitHub Copilot. Thankfully, finally it opens. Yeah, so it normally happens with technology, but you just have to persevere and push through. So finally, so this is the warm-up adventure that, so this is the page, this is our code space, and this is the adventure arena that we've just entered to. So it's basically the repository README. And if we scroll on down here, on to step 2, we'll see a link for entering the warm-up adventure. But from this point, you can also see all the other adventures that are in the main coding adventures. So if you want to also work on those, this is where you can gain access to them. But for this particular case, we'll work on the warm-up adventure. And when that opens up, you'll see our robot avatar, who also happens to be on a warm-up. And then if we move on down, there's a part whereby you are going to learn all about GitHub Copilot. So like a brief description of what GitHub Copilot is. There's also some use cases of GitHub Copilot. And below here, there's a video. So this video walks you through how you can be able to set up GitHub Copilot in VS Code. So this can really come in handy for those guys who are new to using GitHub Copilot. And let's say you want to get started with GitHub Copilot. We also have a section that has some nice links that you can use to be able to do that. So if you follow the steps that are outlined in this particular links that have been provided here, you'll be able to set up to install the GitHub Copilot extension in VS Code and get started on your AI adventures or in your coding. And GitHub Copilot is free for students. So you simply sign up for the GitHub Student Developer Pack and you'll gain access to all the amazing features of GitHub Copilot. So there's also a link here that allows you to be able to do just that. And let's say you're not a student, you can also sign up for a free trial. So our first adventure is going to be the Chamber of Echoes. And like I told you before, so if you move on down, there's this background, and you'll notice that this is the same storyline that was being presented by the AI avatar that we listened to a while back. And our adventure, the Chamber of Echoes, the story behind this is that there's an enchanted castle, the one that you see on the screen, and inside this enchanted castle, there's an echo room. And this echo room basically echoes some numbers in a sequence. So our task is to be able to use GitHub Copilot to be able to predict the next number that is going to be echoed. And in so doing, we are going to be deemed worthy to gain access to all the amazing treasures that are hidden within the castle. So the objective is to enter the echo room, to listen to the sequence that has already been generated, and to use GitHub Copilot to determine the next echo. And our input is going to be a list of at least 3 numbers that form a sequence, so basically an array. And the output is going to be the next number that is going to be echoed. And the assumption is that the sequence is an arithmetic progression. So that means if we have a sequence of, let's say, 2, 4, and 6, the next number should be 8, okay? So the numbers are increasing. So that's the assumption that we're having here. And in this case, we've been given an example. So there's an array here with the sequence 3, 6, 9, and 12. So in this particular case, the next number to be echoed by the room should be 15. And the final rules before we get started, we are going to be using a console app to render the output. And we're also going to create a constant to basically hold that number sequence or the array. And we're also going to determine the common difference between the consecutive numbers. So let's say if the sequence is 3, 6, 9, and 12, the common difference with those numbers is going to be 3. So we're going to use that identified pattern to be able to predict the next number in the sequence. So it's basically, as you can see, it's just it's a really easy way to get you started to use GitHub Copilot and learn about the Copilot adventures. So our first task is to be able to create a file called echochamber.js. So I'm going to open up File Explorer, and I'm going to create a file within the root called echochamber.js. And if we give it a moment, it's going to create the file. As you can see, our file has been created. Let me move that to the side so that we can see both sides. Yeah. So we've created a file known as echochamber.js. And step 2 in this particular adventure is to create a constant named echoes. So we're going to create our constant named echoes. And this constant is basically an array. So the array is going to be holding the numbers 3, 6, 9, and 12. Yeah, so that's the second step. That step is done. Sorry, that should be const. Okay, so on to step 3. Step 3 says we should type the following code after the echoes. So let's do that. So this particular point, we're not yet using GitHub code spaces, but we'll be doing that in GitHub Copilot, sorry, but we'll be doing that in a moment. Predict next. And then we have echoes as the parameter. Yeah. Then we have our curly braces. So when we open up that particular function, we should be able to get some suggestions from GitHub code spaces. Yeah, as you can see, we're already getting a suggestion from GitHub code spaces on. So GitHub code spaces is trying to figure out exactly what we are doing, and it's trying to suggest why it might come in handy in this particular scenario. So based on the context that we have in this coding environment. So this is one of the suggestions that we get. And if we hover over the suggestions, we gain access to this toolbar. And this toolbar, when you click on the arrows, you can be able to scroll between the different suggestions that GitHub Copilot is giving you. So in this case, you have 3 different suggestions. I'm going to go for give me a moment. Sorry, there's okay. So in this particular case, I'm going to go with the third suggestion. So I'll basically press tab, and that is going to create my suggestion. But my suggestion is not really what I want, so I'm going to make some modifications to make it a little bit similar to what is displayed on the example. Okay, so let me move this particular code block to, I'll put it here, const last echo equals length +1. So it's not really giving us what we want, but one of the things that you can do with GitHub Copilot is, so the outputs normally change depending on the different, whenever you alter the code, the output also changes with your changes, okay? So in this particular case, let's do something. Let's try to nudge GitHub Copilot in the direction that we want. So we can do let difference equals to echoes. Okay. And we'll specify the second index, and the last index. So as you can see, GitHub Copilot is also trying to suggest what we might need for this particular scenario. You can see that it's also trying to generate another suggestion, and this particular suggestion is something close to what we want, but it's not really what we want. So I'll just accept it, but I'm going to do some quick modifications. So I'll say let next equals to that. So basically the computation that is going to be done within this part is going to be, the answer is going to be stored within next, and then I'm going to return next. Yeah, and I'll close my function. And as you can see, GitHub Copilot has been able to assist us in coming up with something similar to what we want. So that's the thing about GitHub Copilot. You have to keep on iterating. So whenever you change something, GitHub Copilot also changes with you. So it's like, from the name, GitHub is your copilot. You are the pilot and GitHub is the copilot. So it assists you in your coding journey. So it's a really interactive process. So let's move on to the fifth step. And the fifth step is to enter a new line, and Copilot should suggest code that is similar to the following. And as you can see, Copilot has been able to do that for us. So I'm going to accept this suggestion by pressing Tab, and I'm going to get rid of this part. Yeah, so that's our first interaction with GitHub Codespace. We put something in the file editor, and then GitHub Codespace comes up with something close to what we want. So it's constantly trying to figure out what we are trying to build. So it may not get it correct in the first instance, but when you keep on trying, you get closer to what you want. So on to step number 6, and with step number 6, we'll hover over predict next, and we're going to press Control I. And when you do that, so this was something that I talked about earlier. We're going to gain access to the input bar. And with the input bar, you can basically communicate with GitHub Copilot right from within the file editor. I do not have to open GitHub Copilot chat on the left toolbar. I can simply communicate with Copilot from this point. And we'll be making use of the / commands that I had also talked about earlier. So I want to generate documentation for this particular code that I'm working on. So in order for me to do that, I'll enter the doc / command, and then I'll send the output to GitHub Copilot. And as you can see, GitHub Copilot is trying to generate some comments for this particular code that we have. And there we go. We have some documentation. So it's basically summarized what the code is doing, and it's also explained the parameters and the return that we're going to get. So I like what I'm seeing, so I'm going to accept, but you can also discard if it's not what you want, or you can also rerun the input that you had given, so that GitHub Copilot can try to come up with something else. So I'll click on accept, and as you can see, we already have some documentation in our code. So yeah, GitHub Copilot is really useful. So the next step, we are going to assume that we want to store the memories of the previous numbers that were echoed by the room. So in order for us to be able to do that, we are going to create an array called memories right below the previous array. So let me create my array called memories. And this array of ours is simply going to look like that. Yeah, so that's our array. Yeah, sorry about that. I've entered a comma instead of a semicolon. Yeah, so we've entered our array called memories, and this array called memories is going to store the previous numbers that were echoed by the room. Let's move on to step 11, and step 11 is going to give you an insight into one of the other features that I talked about earlier, generating code from a comment. So add the following comment immediately above the return next statement. So let's do that. Store the full sequence, including the predicted number in memory. Sequence, including the predicted number in memories. Yeah, so let me try expanding that part so that you can have a good look. Yeah, so that's our comment. And after doing that, we're going to enter a new line. And as you can see, GitHub Copilot has already suggested some code that comes from the comment that we basically entered above. So it read the comment, and from that it was able to suggest code that can be able to carry out that particular functionality. So the code that has been generated, hopefully this time it's what we want. So I'm going to click on tab and I'm going to accept it. So as you can see, GitHub Copilot really comes in handy, especially with the comments and documenting. And in other cases, even if you want to generate like unit tests, GitHub Copilot can very well do that for you. So now we are going to save our file. And then we're going to run our file in order for us to be able to see whether we've really predicted the next number in the sequence. Yeah. So I'm going to switch to solutions, and then I'm going to run my file. Okay, so we are getting an error, cannot find module, so that's okay. So let's switch back to the previous. Yeah, and as you can see now, we are getting the output 15. So GitHub Copilot has been able to predict the next number in the sequence, which is 15. Our sequence was 3, 6, 9, and 12, and the next number that was supposed to be echoed is 15. So yeah, GitHub Copilot has gotten us this far, so that's really awesome. And now we are able to gain access to the castle's hidden treasures. Yeah, so that's basically what GitHub, those are some of the features that GitHub Copilot can be able to assist you to do. But let's go ahead and take a look at some other features that you can also make use of. You can simply highlight the code like I'm doing right now, and you can simply click, right click on that particular code block that you've highlighted, and you click on Copilot, and from that, you'll gain access to this particular menu that has so many features that you can make use of within GitHub Copilot. The one that I really normally like to use is add selection to chat. So this will open up GitHub Copilot on the side, and it's going to make use of one of the agents that we had talked about earlier, the workspace agent. So it's going to include this particular file in our context, and whatever question that we ask GitHub Copilot is going to use this particular context to generate an output. So I'm going to add the selection to chat, and as you can see, the file has been added. So I'm going to ask GitHub Copilot to, let's say, simplify. Let me try simplify. Let me try to explain instead. Yeah. Let me ask GitHub Copilot to explain my code. Yeah, so as you can see, so this is GitHub Copilot chat. This is an added extension that comes with, whenever you install GitHub Copilot, you gain access to this GitHub Copilot chat on the side, which allows you to interact with GitHub Copilot using natural language. But there are also some added functionalities, like we've talked about the / commands, the agents, and the variables that can basically enhance your productivity, because some common use cases, let's say explain, you don't have to come up with an entire prompt. You simply enter the / command explain, and it can do the explanation for you. Whenever you want to fix your code, you can simply enter the / command fix, and it will fix that particular code for you. Okay, or let's say I want to make use of a particular agent workspace. I just enter the character, and I'll gain access to all these agents. So the one that I want to make use of is workspace. So I'll select workspace in this case, and I'll say simplify the code. And GitHub Copilot is going to do some thinking and generate some simplified code for us. So it's trying to collect the workspace information, and after a while, we're going to gain some simplified code. So as you can see, it's really easy and really nice to work with GitHub Copilot. The team at GitHub has really made it easy for you to use GitHub Copilot. And there's some other features like inserting at cursor. So you can basically insert this entire code within the cursor that is in the file editor, or you can simply copy it and then paste it manually. Yeah, so yeah, that's it for our demo. Let me go back to my presentation because time is a bit not on our side. Yeah, so that was the warm-up adventure, and as you can see, it was a really simple way to get you started. So there are other coding adventures within the GitHub Copilot adventures, and these ones are a little bit more engaging than that one, but they're really going to enhance your coding skills. One of the things that you learn while you're doing this is you're basically leveling up your coding skills. And these Copilot adventures are not only available in JavaScript, we also have some other solutions in Python and in C#. So if you want to take a look at those, within the repository, there's a folder known as Solutions. You can simply go to Solutions. Let's say when you're stuck at a particular adventure and you want to gain some insight. So you can simply go to the solutions and you can find the solution for whichever programming language that you'll be using, be it Python, C# or JavaScript. So these are some of the other coding adventures. We have the Clockwork Town of Tempora, the Magical Forest of Algora, the Celestial Alignment of Lemuria, all these adventures. So I'll suggest that you go to aka.ms/copilot adventures to give them a try. So what next after this session? So one of the things that I'll recommend is to fork and clone the GitHub Adventures repo. So especially if you want to work on it from within VS Code. But if you want to do so from GitHub Codespaces, let's say you have access to the GitHub Student Developer Pack, you can also do that. But we also suggest leaving a star on the repository. Within GitHub, just leave a star on the repository because it's like a good incentive for the team that is developing this content. You can also, so in this particular session, we've completed the warm-up adventure. So you can go ahead and complete the other coding adventures using GitHub Copilot. And then if you have a new adventure, a new idea to suggest to the team that is creating this content, let's say you want to come up with a new adventure, you've thought of something that can be turned into an adventure. Let's say you want to solve a linked list using GitHub Copilot. So you can definitely do that. You can come up with your idea and you submit it to the team via a pull request, and then the team will definitely look at it. And if it's possible, they will merge it with the entire code space, and your work will be part of the GitHub Copilot adventures. So if that is your kind of thing, you can definitely give that a try. And one of the most important things, so all this content that we're learning it can basically prepare you for the Imagine Cup. And this is, I definitely recommend you to give the Imagine Cup a try. My team and I participated in 2023, and it was a really amazing experience for us. We won in the Epic Challenge in EMEA, and also in the EMEA World Finals in the EMEA World Finals. We emerged the first place in the lifestyle category. So it was a really nice experience. And for us as students, the content that you learn within this particular GitHub Copilot adventures, you can use that knowledge to be able to participate in the Imagine Cup. And you gain access to so many benefits. One of the benefits that you gain is expert advice and founder guidance. So when you get to the semi-final stage at Imagine Cup, you are paired with a Microsoft professional. In our case, we were paired with a Microsoft MVP, and he basically guided us through the development of our MVP. It was a really nice experience. I definitely recommend it for you guys. You also get to network and gain global recognition because this is a global competition. So when you participate, you compete with so many other peers from all over the world. You gain some insight into innovation and into how these cutting-edge artificial intelligence tools are being built. So it's a really amazing experience. And it's currently open, so you can go to aka.ms/2025 Imagine Cup to register and you get started on your journey. I'll also be mentoring some people who are interested in the Imagine Cup. So more information is going to come on that. And now we'll move on to our Q&A session. So if you have any questions regarding GitHub Copilot, now is the time. Askia, do we have any questions?
Not seeing any questions coming in, but yeah, people are enjoying the session. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's session. My name is Skia, and I'm one of the event coordinators for the Redmond Reactor Space. Before we get started today, I've got a few things I'd like to go over, so if you could please take a moment to read our code of conduct. We seek to provide a response. Yeah, it looks like that's looks like we're good on questions. I don't see any coming in.
Okay, so yeah, I think if we don't have any questions, I think that's it from my end. You guys keep on taking the GitHub Copilot adventures, learn all about how you can use GitHub Copilot to supercharge your development, because GitHub Copilot is meant to supercharge your development and to make you more productive. And one of the benefits that you can gain from this is that it can better position you as in the employment space. So employers normally look at how you can enhance productivity in the workplace. So GitHub Copilot can do that for you. So definitely give the sessions a try. Yeah.
And it looks like Moses, looks like we did get one question in here, so we'll put that up for you.
Okay, so to those who are not students, how do they use the GitHub Copilot where they get free credits similar to those of the student developer pack? So in the GitHub repository that I had shared, so when you go to aka.ms/copilot adventures, you're going to gain access to the repository that I basically showed you. But when you click on warm-up adventures and you get into the actual warm-up adventures, there's a section where it guides you through that entire process of gaining access to GitHub Copilot. Let's say if you're a beginner. Yeah, so just go into the warm-up adventure section, and in this particular, I do not know if, Askia, are you showing my screen?
Yeah, it's up there.
There's this particular session that can below the warm-up adventures, there's a particular section that contains the links that you can use to basically gain access to GitHub Copilot if you're totally new to GitHub Copilot. Yeah. Okay. I think there was also a link for that as well. Yeah, I think you've already shared that. So I think that will be able to assist them. Okay, so.
All right. Well, Moses, thank you so much. We'll let you get on with it. We've got the link shared in the chat. And if you do have additional questions, you can definitely reach out to the Imagine Cup or CoPilot Adventures and get your questions answered. But we want to take this time to thank you all for joining. I definitely thank Moses for an excellent session. We appreciate you powering through the technical challenges of being live. But we would also love any feedback that you have to offer. We are always open for that. So we have put our survey link on the screen, and you'll want to reference today's event code, which is 23880. And appreciate your time. Thank you. And hopefully we'll see you on the next episode.